Right now, doctors are marveling at what's being called the world's oldest baby. The Ohio boy was born from an embryo frozen in 1994, and he was conceived in a lab by a couple using IVF, which was relatively new at the time. His adoptive parents found the embryo through a Christian adoption embryo agency. And so for more on all this, I want to bring in ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel. And Dr. Patel, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. But first, this is a record, and it's really kind of remarkable. But what's the reaction in the medical community to this news?
You know, Alex, I know people will see these headlines and think this is sci-fi, this is something of the future, but some of the physicians and scientists I've talked to are like, hey, no, this is what we can do with reproductive science and technology. The fertility doctors I've talked to, the reproductive endocrinologists, see this headline and say, yes, spread awareness that we can keep these embryos frozen for a very long period of time. But if you look at the broader conversation among the healthcare community, this really sits in that Venn diagram of human biology and development, scientific advancement, and ethics and individuality in kind of making these decisions for families. So yes, call it a scientific marvel. Appreciate science and realize that there's a lot of humanity in this story.
Well, and that's a really good point, Doc. But I'm also kind of curious, implanting older embryos, is it more of a risk?
From everything that the data suggests and what I've talked to about the experts here, the only risk or the only high risk situation really comes at the age of the woman when the embryo was frozen. But if the embryo successfully can be thawed and passes screening, the risk is exactly the same. It could be an embryo that's been frozen for a few months or one that's been frozen for 30 years. Because remember, this baby was born at term and is fully healthy. So that actual freezing process is what matters. And that process has actually advanced over time. After the year 2000, the new method of cryopreservation is even more advanced with a higher success rate when it comes to thawing.
Well, and so with that in mind, are you expecting to see older embryos, become more of a trend with IVF?
In general, we are seeing higher rates of ART, that's assisted reproductive technology, and IVF is one of them. So there is an unknown question about what is going to happen with these potential millions of frozen embryos across the world. But Alex, we see that CDC birth rates are going down. The request for IVF is actually going up. About 2 to 3% of U.S. births are born from ART, and that's higher in some states, and it's unfortunately lower in other states as well, where people may want to seek this technology, but may not be able to because of access, healthcare policy in that state, or insurance coverage.
Well, and lastly, obviously, something like this grabs headlines and it's fun to talk about, but are there ethical questions here?
That's exactly right. So there are ethical questions, and these are questions that we should be asking and making sure that people are on the same page with, because it affects state-by-state policy. With one of the biggest questions is, what is the future of frozen embryos that may not be put up for adoption? What is the ethical consideration when it comes to research, and who actually I may say that when it comes to embryos? So we have to have these conversations while we're talking about advancements in science and celebrating new births.
Yo, any woman I get pregnant, this is what we're doing. We're freezing the baby. So, as I already know by the title and by that video we just watched, this right here, the world's oldest baby. He's already 30 years old, coming out the womb. This baby's older than me. I was born in 96. This baby is older than me already. I guess technically not, because his birthday is when he was actually born. So, but this is some crazy technology. I'm not gonna lie. I could see more people, especially just people who have access to it, right, to be able to actually freeze embryos. So, and I'm not too knowledgeable about what an embryo actually is, but I'm assuming it's like after conception has already happened, what ends up turning into a baby. So I'm guessing they took the egg and they took the sperm, mixed it together, put it in the freezer, and a baby was able to be born from that. Now, I do question it ethically, because how many frozen babies do they have just sitting in the lab, and who's in control of these frozen babies? But as long as they ain't doing nothing weird with them, I guess it's cool. That's to be continued, I guess. If they're just getting adopted, getting a chance at life. Dude thought he was coming out in 1994 before cell phones. Well, they had cell phones probably, but for all this technology we got now, Tinder, Facebook, all this different stuff, he thought he was coming out way back then. But he's making his debut to the world in 2025. Probably one of the worst years to be born. We've had a crazy decade so far in the 2020s. Let's just say that. But I do think it's good, though. I do think it's can be good. It can be good things to come from this. Like I said, there are a lot of people who struggle to have kids nowadays, and it's just giving them another way. I do think those parents, they should have probably adopted a baby that's already born, because we do have a lot of orphans. That's one thing. Like if I get, well, not even if, when I get super dumb rich, I'll probably adopt a few kids just to help out society. You know, there's a lot of orphans out there. I wasn't an orphan, thank God, but you know, we all could have ended up as orphans. So, you know, shout out to the orphans. This guy got adopted. I guess he was already ahead in line in adoption since he was conceived 30 years ago. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird thing to even think about. But like I said, 2025, technology is moving fast. Technology is moving very fast nowadays. So if you're not keeping up with it in whatever field you're in, wherever you work in, then you're going to end up getting left behind very, very quickly. I know some states and some places are against the IVF, the however they do that. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I'm not too knowledgeable on anything besides regular, you know, how you regularly make a baby. That's all I know. But I do think this is good. Shout out to the parents, you know. I think they did show them where they at. Yeah, they look very excited. They look very excited that their baby is just as old as them. That's really crazy. That baby had been waiting. And he's here. They said he was fully healthy too. So I guess he's going to be famous from day one. That's good for him. Attention brings dollars nowadays. It's definitely, we're in an attention economy. So, yeah, man. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this old baby, man. Baby older than some of y'all watching this, man. It's crazy. Lay y'all out.